We drifted away a little bit there, didn't we? That would have been awkward if we'd been actually in the bar. No, you say bye. No, bye. No, so good. All right. Welcome to episode 15 of Rockstar CMO FM. The M is for marketing, the F is for, well, you decide. As we wonder whether the world needs another effing marketing podcast. I'm your host, Ian Truscott, founding editor of RockstarCMO.com and chief bottle washer at the content marketing agency Apropingo. This episode was recorded on Friday the 19th of June, and yes, you're probably tired of me mentioning this, but the pubs are still shut here in London, and we're still pretty much on lockdown. So, in the absence of being able to talk rubbish in the pub, I appreciate you letting me talk to you at this social distance. Thank you for joining us. It's the usual format this week. Coming up, we chat to Jane Scandurra, personal branding, social selling and marketing expert. She's an advisor to many senior executives and shares some of her insights. And as she's a native New Yorker, the conversation goes at quite a clip. I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. I'm again delighted to welcome my friend and content marketing guru, Robert Rose, chief troublemaker at the Content Advisory, to the virtual Rockstar CMO bar for a cocktail and one thought for the week. Both the cocktail and the thought are particularly interesting this week, although regular listeners might guess what I'll be drinking. But first, I'll flick through the pages of our monthly dose of marketing street knowledge that we call RockstarCMO.com, and I'll suggest something that I'd like you to take a look at. Right, let's get on with the show, shall we? Okay, so this week, the section I'd like you to take a look at on Rockstar CMO is the Right For Us section. Yes, folks, if you like what we're doing, why don't you pitch us an article idea? I admit I do get a lot of crap in my inbox from people thinking we want to share link-filled dull articles, listicles, or a particularly tenacious spam thread I have around explainer videos, or maybe worse, the email about growing my fast food business. So it'd be a welcome break to hear from you. We have a simple editorial policy. We sell ideas, not things, and we're interested in people with stories, experience to share, and opinions. Maybe you know a CMO that's a bit of a rock star, a marketer or agency that we need to get on the tour bus with, or you have a strong marketing opinion that's not quite right for the mainstream that we can share. If so, get in touch. Best way to do that is our homepage, rockstarcmo.com, and click on the Right For Us link on the top right-hand side of the screen. I look forward to hearing from you. Okay, let's move on to the interview section. As I admitted previously, having this podcast is an excellent excuse to chat to folks I like, haven't seen for a while, or have only collaborated with virtually. And I hope you find them interesting too. Jane Scandurra is certainly one of those folks. Jane has been a long-time collaborator and friend of Rockstar CMO. When she's not doing that, she's a wicked smart marketer. She advises clients on personal branding, social selling, through individual coaching and training. Hope you enjoy listening to this conversation. Welcome, Jane, to Rockstar CMO FM.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. It's good to finally chat to you. I know that you've made a lot of contribution to Rockstar. We've sort of collaborated virtually, but this is the first time we've spoken, so it's good to hear from you.
It is. And I love the style of the writing. I mean, it's just very clever, very unique, and you're really building a tremendous brand. I love it.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, we have some fun, and the nice thing about it is that's why we do it. Is we're not trying to build, a listicle based audience. It's more about opinion and having some fun with it.
Exactly.
But for people that don't read our wonderful publication and maybe aren't familiar with you, tell us a bit about yourself, Jane.
Well, first and foremost, I'm a proud native New Yorker, since I don't have the accent like you. And I grew up in Queens, which is one of the boroughs of New York City, which was way before it became cool to live outside of the boroughs in Brooklyn or Queens. But before going on my own as a consultant in 2006, I spent most of my career in various global market management roles at large companies like IBM, Nokia, Bristol Myers, BBDO, advertising. And actually, at the risk of dating myself in a world of ageism, I've been working in the online business for over 3 decades. Started when I was 5, I would say, right?
Yeah, I did the same.
Exactly. But it was one of the highlights of my career was spending about 7.5 years working for Prodigy, which I don't know if you even never heard of. Have you ever heard of Prodigy?
I only know the group.
No, it's not the group. I wish I could say I work for the group. It was actually one of the U.S.'s largest online services prior to the widespread commercialization of the internet, and it was a partnership of IBM and Sears. So, and as I mentioned, looking back on your things that are tossed into your swimming pool, there are a few things that I would have tossed back in there in the early 90s, like the banner ads, which could have saved everyone a lot of time and money. So now I spend my time working on training and coaching programs that help organizations leverage branding and social media to drive engagement. And I do a lot of executive coaching and social selling training.
Oh, splendid. Just in that introduction, I think we could have about 3 episodes. I mean, the way you just glided across ageism there. And I think that's a major issue in our industry that we could definitely talk about. And maybe I should do an issue on it for Rockstar CMO. But if we can, just to, right now, 2020 is working out to be quite the year for us marketers.
Mm-hmm.
So, we were having a rough time with COVID, and then, we have very much an issue around about equality, particularly there in the US. How are your clients handling it, and what advice are you giving to them right now?
It's tough. The biggest thing is that, I'm in the epicenter here in New York, right, for the US. Mm-hmm. And, New York City is pretty much shut down in terms of working in the city, and in terms of, massive layoffs, massive furloughs, big interruptions, which I'm sure, you're experiencing over there too. But, more than anything else, it's going to be harder to get noticed. It's going to be harder to get the attention with people so distracted. So it's really knowing that differentiation, that value. I mean, I'm getting a lot of calls from people who are being laid off and furloughed. I'm like, well, you need to, if you haven't built that brand, if you haven't built that network, it's going to be very, very hard for you to get back into the swing of things.
And I think that's interesting because there's 2 schools of thought there, isn't there? That everybody's sitting around consuming loads of content, but on the other hand, I don't really buy into that completely. I think they're only really consuming good content, or the content they choose. I think people have disengaged a little bit from social media, particularly lately with the politics that's going on.
Yes.
So I think you're right. I think you need to make that extra effort, which kind of draws back into what it is that you do, which is help people with personal branding. And I mean, right now it's really tough, but in normal circumstances, why do you think it's so important that people focus on their personal brand?
Because, in today's day and age, just the attention spans are just nil. And the only way to really get attention is to draw people to you and know the value that you deliver and why people should care. A lot of people don't have those networks, and I know that people are not consuming, like you said, maybe they're not consuming content in the shutdown and whatever, but you're reaching, you can have people to reach out to. If you've been isolated and no one knows who you are, or you haven't built that network, or that people, don't reach out to you, you're going to have a tough time. So I think people don't buy skills. I often tell people they really buy comfort. And so, we all have our doctors. I mean, I've gone through, I can't tell you how many dentists I've gone through. They all have their diplomas on the wall, but if they don't make me feel comfortable in their care, then I'm going to go somewhere else. So it's really understanding what your strengths are. And I don't know if you've heard of the tool Strengths Finder. It's a great, it's by Gallup.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things that you to be able to understand what you do well. And it definitely changed my direction when I went through this. And it's really more, your reputation. I mean, nothing has really changed. It is your reputation and being able to stand out.
That's interesting. I'll include a link to that in the show notes. But to me, that as a product marketer, I guess that just sounds the same as if you were selling any product, right? You're actually selling reassurance and trust.
Exactly.
And it's the same with yourself and your own services, isn't it? That's really interesting. And I think that's that's also especially important now that people are getting very familiar with the gig economy, right? They're employing people in different ways.
Exactly. And the first and foremost, it's a mindset. It's you have to think of yourself as a brand. If you're not thinking of yourself as a brand, it's going to be very hard for you to be authentic and to be genuine and to put yourself out there with a clarity of purpose and direction and the confidence that you need to be able to do it.
Yeah. So we, I guess social media is the place to do that, obviously. But also more broadly than just recruitment and people getting hired, it's also changing selling, I think. And also right now, I think every organization has turned into a virtual selling organization. Although I would argue from a content marketing perspective, we've been doing it for years. But what's the key piece of advice you're giving to organizations right now when they're looking at social selling? I know that's something else you've been looking at.
Yes, I mean I do that regularly. I have a program that I teach, and it's a 6-week program because it's really a mindset more than anything else. Social selling is a mindset change, and it takes a behavior change. So I do like a 6-week program. So 1 week we do this, and the next week we do that, and by the end of the 6 weeks you're kind of doing it. But the issue is, the internet may be the way that we're delivering things, but the mindset is to be helpful. Nobody is sold, right? And I have a story that I wanted to tell you that before the internet, this hasn't even started, but social selling kind of always existed. Back when I was at Prodigy, the online service, I was in a buying position. So I had in my late 20s, I had a $20 million budget for marketing and promotion. So everybody was my best friend, right? Everybody wanted for me to buy from them. But there were a few people that would call me, and they were sales guys, but they didn't sell me. They would say, "Hey, Jane, if you did this, you could probably save about $10,000 on that newsletter that you're doing." And if you did, and these are the guys that were helping me to just be better at my job, and they weren't doing business with me. And there was one in particular that I started to do business with because he was helpful. And this guy went on to become the founder, or one of the founders of Blue Man Group.
Wow.
Yes. One of my best friends back then. We spent more time together than I did with my family. And he told me back about a few years ago, there was an anniversary party for Blue Man Group. And he told me that if there was no Prodigy, there would be no Blue Man Group, because the money that he made off the contracts that I gave him financed the first show. Now, how cool is that?
Oh, that's amazing. That's a nice claim to fame, isn't it? That you're right there at the beginning.
Yeah, but then it's like, where are my royalties, right?
Always be getting those.
Yeah, but the point being is that this was happening before the internet. He was helping me. He was just being helpful. So the point being is that with social media, these salespeople need to be out there because we're all looking to educate ourselves to be better at what we do. And if the salespeople are out there sharing the content and helping me be better at my job, then I'm going to gravitate to them and want to work with them. So it hasn't changed. It's just the vehicle and how it's being delivered.
Yeah. So because I think it seems to me that, even people that talk about social selling, I started following somebody on Twitter who talks about social selling, and then he just started tagging me and everything. And that wasn't what I thought of as social selling. I thought it was interesting. And then when I didn't respond, he just unfollowed me. And I thought, is that how social selling works? But what you're saying there is just be a decent person.
Yes.
The fact you're doing it on social media doesn't really change anything.
No, and it's also timing. I tell people in my classes, like, social selling is like dating. If if you're doing something, you're not going to go and send an email and saying, "Hey, buy from me." Just like you're not going to say, "Hey, marry me," when you first walk up to somebody. So thinking about it in real life, it's stupid what people are doing. And I find that you're right. It's the people that profess to be the experts in this that are the biggest offenders.
Yeah. I just thought that was interesting because I was genuinely curious about social selling, and I thought, I wonder what this guy's got to say. And so I started reading some of his stuff, and then this behavior started, and I thought, I don't, you're not credible.
No.
So, and I think that probably is the same in any industry, isn't it? Whatever you're doing socially, you need to be trustworthy and credible first about the thing that you're talking about, right?
Absolutely.
And how you go about it. Yeah.
And that comes with time. And that comes with time. It's patience. And, I understand that salespeople have quota bullseyes on their back, and, they need to make their quarterly quotas. But, this is a pipeline filling thing. And so it's not something that's going to happen overnight. And salespeople are very impatient.
Yeah, that's true. And my main focus is on content marketing. So I share that pain in that, if you don't invest, I was talking to somebody the other day. I think it was Robert Rose, who's a content marketing guru of mine. And the proverb that if the best time to plant a tree was 200 years ago, the second best time is today, right? So it's the same, isn't it? With any sales and marketing technique, you need to invest a bit of time into it.
Absolutely. It's relationships. It's all relationships, whether it be consumer driven or it's a business to business. You have to build that trust, and that takes time. Again, it's like dating.
Yeah. So from that perspective, and I know something else, and something you've written for us actually on Rockstar CMO, because we've done we cover weird topics for a marketing a publication sometimes, and employee engagement was one of them. I don't mean the topic is weird, it's just not something other people cover. And you told us a really good story about engaging current employees and former employees in that network, and that seems to be very cogent to what you've just been talking about social selling and maintaining a network from a personal brand perspective. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, from a former employee, you mean, right?
Yes.
So after I left IBM, I went in a very creative project, and then because of my social media activity, I stayed in touch with some folks, and they brought me back in as a consultant to work on their alumni program. So it's a corporate alumni program.
Yeah.
And so my job was to engage the global sales and marketing teams to engage with former IBM employees who were now IT decision makers in new companies. And these folks who were your former employees, regardless of how they left, maybe they were laid off or maybe, whatever, they still may have an affinity, and most do, for the products and services that the company sells. And they're the lowest hanging fruit, and they could be your biggest advocates. And we found that engaging former employees it was hugely successful in driving business much quicker and much easier.
And how do you manage a program like that? Is it like any kind of influencer program or any customer targeting program? You just build a database of those folks and reach out? Is it a formal process organizations should do?
Well, it's interesting because when I'm trying to think of what year that was. It was probably 2009, 2010 when I started on that program. And what I was doing was trying to get these people more in tune with LinkedIn as a way to connect with people. And when you're working with some salespeople that have been at the organization for 10, 20 years, they're like, I know everybody I need to know. I was like, yeah, but you don't know who they know, right?
Yeah.
So it was really more of enabling them in how to leverage LinkedIn, which is, again, the social selling aspect of looking up people in companies and target companies and seeing who former employees. And I remember once being on a call with a global sales team and giving the shtick on why they needed to, connect with former employees. And one very smart sales guy, while I was on the call, was going on a sales call later that day and looked up the account and saw that there was a former employee there that he did not know. And he closed the deal in less than 6 months, which they had no relationship with the company before.
I think LinkedIn's astonishing. I was an industry analyst for a little while, and I'd meet, I'd have clients, vendors pitch me on their latest ideas, their software, and all this kind of stuff. And it was always a measure for me of engagement is if they bothered to look me up on LinkedIn before the meeting. It's, most of us are fairly public on LinkedIn, and it's not hard to find just a couple of little nuggets or a person you've got in common or something about somebody's background that can just start a conversation so easily.
Exactly. And for salespeople, they can put a ton of information with case studies and all kinds of things that people can look and they'll learn about the company and the products and services they sell without even speaking to them. So, having a strong profile is very, very important.
Yeah, I also think that visiting somebody's profile, even if you don't say hello, is a way of saying hello in a strange kind of way. Do you know what I mean? Like that to see that somebody took the time and interest in your profile could, it warms the conversation, even if you haven't had it yet. if that makes sense.
It can also work against you. I have because you go to someone's profile and it's like nothing there. Those are the opportunities that you don't know that you lost because of
that's true.
So it really makes sense to take that time to really make it a strong one.
Yeah, and that's to your personal branding point. Is that where you tend to advise people to start on LinkedIn with their personal brand?
Yeah. Yes. Well, before that, to know what makes them different. I mean, not all salespeople are created equal. Some people thrive on the cold call. Some people are better at relationships. What is that unique aspect? What is that something memorable about you that's going to make someone want to work with you? And then take that and then leverage that into your LinkedIn profile. And then how do you leverage that for social selling? So it's kind of a process.
Right. Okay. And what's your top tip? Well, is it because a lot of people's LinkedIn profile, and probably now I'm thinking about mine, are probably just really a CV they've thrown up with some nice mealy words around it. Is that the primary problem you see with what people do?
Yeah, because there are certain. It's all about feeding and satisfying the LinkedIn algorithm. And if you don't have a complete profile, you are not getting the exposure that you want. And even if you share stuff on LinkedIn, if you don't have a complete profile, it's not going to be seen in the news feeds. So sprinkling lots of keywords that are relevant to what you do, as well as having I think one of the biggest tips I give people is having your headline be something that makes you stand out. If you just have sales manager and that's it, so that's what shows up in search. So you want that to work for you.
Yeah, I always struggle with that one because you want to appear, like you say, distinctive, but you don't want to appear like an idiot. Some people put some weird things in their line, don't they? Like that they drink tea, or that would be in my case, currently drinking tea. But they just put daft stuff in there, and it does make them stand out. But you wouldn't click on it because you've got no idea what they're talking about, and they seem to have too much personality.
No, it's true. And one little blip in my career is I co-produced a feature documentary. And I put in my profile headline for a while there, documentary filmmaker. And that got more attention than anything I'd done over the last 30 years, which was weird. But, just something very unique about you that makes you stand out.
Yeah, no, there's a top tip. Before we, actually, you've already referred to it in the conversation. You know about our portal to marketing hell, our Rockstar CMO swimming pool, where we chuck all the bullshit, snake oil, and overhyped trends. Yep. Of all the things that you've come across in your career, and I think we've touched on a couple of them, which is the one you'd throw from our virtual balcony?
Well, I'd love to throw one in that's relatively new as opposed to old. I mean, the old one was the banner ads. That would I definitely agree because people, and we knew that back in the late 80s, early 90s. But something that's really been pissing me off lately is LinkedIn solicitations and sales pitches that sound like they're coming from my best friend, and they're for services that I clearly have no need for. And if they just checked out my profile on my website, but I know, email marketing is alive and well, and, even a blind squirrel will find a nut eventually, but out of thousands of emails, maybe they'll get a few handful of responses, but it is just killing LinkedIn. I think, I just think people have to just stop doing it. I think that they're scraping the data and sending these things out because they've obviously not looked at my profile. They obviously, hey, Jane, and like, don't call me hey, don't say hey, you don't know me.
Yeah. I this is a pet peeve I'm seeing all over that everybody has, and one of the challenge and the worst ones are the ones where they're pitching the services that you provide.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I've gotten those too. Yes. And I've responded to those. Like, have you not seen what I do?
Have you not even read the first? Well, the thing is, in my profile, I actually have there, by all means, come say hello, but don't connect. I'll connect. I only connect with people I've met or I've worked with. But please say hello. And I still get, connection requests saying, we should expand our network. Why?
Right. Well, that's okay. That's okay. I mean, I do accept and I do send out linked invitations to people I don't know, but I tell them why. I do tell them why.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I want to know. I want to know why. Right. For me, that isn't a firm enough reason. The firm enough reason isn't I've looked at your profile. It looks interesting. I think that I should expand my profile, my network. I'm not sure about that. Okay, but it goes
back down to being helpful. It goes back down to being helpful. You, not for me.
Yeah. But you're absolutely right. I think chucking all of that stuff. And I think you're right. It's killing LinkedIn. I like LinkedIn. I keep it fairly clean. And Twitter's drive me nuts. I mean, somebody once described that as a burning dumpster, and I think they make a very good point. But LinkedIn, I still have the faith, and I agree with you. It's going to get ruined by these unsolicited sales calls. So I think that's absolutely true.
Yep.
So that's been fabulous. I'd love to go back over all the things we talked about. You've raised some really interesting points, and hopefully I'll have you back on the podcast again soon. Mm-hmm. So when folks spin the dial on the interwebs, where will they find you, Jane?
Make it very easy. Just my first and last name together, one word, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and even janescandurra.com, where you can find the links to my business offerings as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Jane. I really enjoyed the conversation. I look forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Hey, bye-bye.
Splendid. Thank you so much, Jane. Super conversation. Right, it's that time again as we unwind from a long, hard Rockstar CMO week of throwing things into the swimming pool, and judging by the huddle of eager autograph hunting content marketing groupies in reception, Mr. Robert Rose must be in the bar. Good evening, Robert. What are we drinking?
Oh, my goodness. It's so good to see you, my friend. Here's the thing. We have a wonderful cocktail this week. We have what's called a dark volcano. And this is, my signature tequila. I'm a big tequila drinker, as you know. Mm-hmm. So it's tequila, lemon, bitters. Yeah. And here's the secret ingredient: activated charcoal. And yeah, it sounds weird, but it's actually really, really nice. It's easy to find. It's not, you would think it would be hard to find, but it's actually very easy to find in the pharmacy or of your choice there. And you put all that together and you get this very sort of smoky, wonderful, sweet drink that feels quite tropical, even though there's that smoke of the activated charcoal to it. So It's a beautiful, wonderful drink.
Well, I mean, that's an ingredient I've never heard of, right? But I'm let alone have. But I'm going to try. I'm going to try and make a drink now. Tell us a bit more about activated charcoal. What does that actually mean?
Well, it's just activated charcoal. It's usually used to do things like settle your stomach.
Okay.
It's a natural remedy for, an upset stomach or those sorts of things where you've eaten something wrong or whatever. And
all right.
It's basically just a fine, usually in a powder form, you'll find it, and you can drink it with water or whatever to help settle your stomach. But in this case, you're mixing it into your cocktail.
Splendid. Like a lot of your cocktails, they always sound like health tonics to me. So that sounds fantastic. But it was basically tequila. And I think we've established in previous episodes that the Bombay Sapphire I have on my desk right here is sufficient, correct?
Yes, that is that will be a sufficient replacement for your tequila.
All right. So a quick shot of that, yeah. And then, needless to say, I don't have charcoal. What else did I put? Did you put into that drink?
Well, there was lemon and bitter.
Lemon and bitters. Oh, you know what that tastes like when you put them together? It tastes very much like tonic water.
Indeed.
I think. Yeah. Let's drop a bit of that in there. Splendid. Ooh, I'll give this a try. What did you say it was called?
This is the Dark Volcano.
Oh, that is quite nice. It doesn't look as dark as you expect, though.
No, it did not.
No,
yeah,
no. Mine's almost clear.
I suspect it's not quite as dark as you might expect. Yes.
But that's a very nice drink. It's a pleasure to come down here and see you every week, Robert, because my eyes are always open to something new.
There you go.
Yes. And if we're sitting drinking these, where would we go?
So it is a bit of a tropical tasting drink, despite the ingredients that you might have heard there. There is a place, and my well-documented hatred for Florida is well known. But there is a place in Florida, North Florida, just shy of the Georgia border. It's called Amelia Island. And it's a beautiful, wonderful place. And it's the, just gorgeous white sand beaches and very, very southern in its charm. So that's where I think we should drink these.
Oh, I've seen they have a big car show there, don't they? For I think once a year. I don't know whether that's your interest, but they have a big car show there, and it always looks beautiful when I see it on TV. So I can picture us there at some beautiful vintage cars sitting out there.
Very nice.
That sounds very nice. And then, actually, we shouldn't have taken the car, should we?
Right?
I've driven myself into the wrong story here. So we're sitting there on Amelia Island and chatting over a few of these things. What thought would you leave me with as we wander back to the villa?
I think one of the things we've been talking a lot about is the idea of, mapping content to our marketing and the journeys that our customers are taking. And one of the mistakes or traps that I see us falling into a lot is looking at the maps that we build, our journey maps that we're building of our customers, as static things, projects that we create once and then we try and lock ourselves into. And one of the things that I think is becoming increasingly important is making sure that we look at journey maps as a process, not a project, where, maps change, right? Rivers change their course, cities grow, things happen. And so just like that, our journey maps should change as well. And so as we start mapping new optimal experiences into those journey maps, we have to make sure that we're allowing for the fact that they will change too.
Yeah, and I think we've skillfully avoided the issues of this year, but that's a classic example. I just wrote a blog post myself about how now's a good time to review your personas, for example, because events change, like you say, the world changes, and you need to keep on top of those things. And the thing I always see is that people do this at the beginning, when they first get hired or a project starts. And then they sort of put it away in the virtual filing cabinet and never look at it again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let alone review it. And so that's a really good point. So the thought for the week after we've had our cocktail is that we need to refresh our journey maps on a regular basis.
Indeed.
Oh, that's splendid. Thank you very much, Robert. And I'll speak to you hopefully next week.
Absolutely looking forward to it.
Cheers. Thanks, Robert. Thank you, Robert. This is quickly becoming the highlight of my week. And that wraps up this episode, and thank you for dropping your virtual quarter into the podcasting jukebox and jiving along to our tune. Thanks also to our Rockstar CMO contributing community, to Jane and Robert, and of course to you for listening. If you like the show or have some suggestions or feedback, please let us know or drop us a rating into the podcasting platform of your choice. As I mentioned previously, you can get in touch with us through our website, rockstarcmo.com, on Twitter @rockstarcmo, or on LinkedIn. And of course, I'll share the show notes and all the links from the show at rockstarcmo.com/podcast. And if you'd like to join our band, write for us, share in a marketing opinion, or nominate your own Rockstar CMO, then please get in touch. I've been your host, Ian Truscott, founding editor of rockstarcmo.com and chief bottle washer at @ProPingo. Next week, I'm hoping to chat to Elle Michelle Smith, who I mentioned in a previous podcast. She runs a fantastic podcast herself called Cultural Soup that I recommend you check out. In the meantime, I hope you stay safe, well, and as sane as you feel you need to be. And I hope you'll join us again next week on Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the boys' club of advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.